This is your Interstate on the Interstate.
Welcome. Today's guest is Jordan Kirk, who is a writer and a great thinker. He currently teaches in the Department of English at Pomona College and researches the history and theory of metaphor, among many other fascinating topics. In part one of this two-part series, we talk about Jordan's spiritual path going from ayahuasca to finding his teacher, his Eminence Garchen Rinpoche. Welcome, Jordan.
Thanks, Paulette. So great to be here.
I'm more curious about where you are spiritually because a little background for anyone that's listening. We met here in Peru while you, Jordan, were on an ayahuasca retreat, or two, right? Back to back. And so
yeah,
I'm curious where you're at now. And I know that over time, all of our spiritual paths, they evolve, they change. The things that we're into are different at different periods of time. So I'm just curious what's present spiritually right now.
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't really been something I've done since more or less that time when we met, with a few little exceptions, which I kind of think were a mistake, because basically right around that time, I received very clear instructions from the medicine, stop drinking, which was, specifically it was, you've reached the end of this sequence of lessons, so stop.
Whoa.
And I didn't quite know what that meant. Like, what does that mean, the end of a sequence of lessons? Like, does that mean there's more lessons to come? There's another sequence? I wasn't really sure. There were signs at that time that I was paying attention to that were directing me and my sort of like seeker mode to go in the direction of a certain lineage of Tibetan Buddhists. And I went in that direction and took a little while, but I eventually, maybe 6 months after that time that you're talking about, met a great saint of our time called His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche, and have been studying with him for these years.
Just backing up a little bit, you said that you got clear instructions. Like for you, did you hear her voice saying, okay, this is the end of this sequence,
Yes.
or how?
Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Like in those words. Oh yeah, totally. That was one of the main things that I experienced during that time during that sequence of lessons. I mean, I considered each of the times that I drank to be a kind of installment, or like bead on a chain, or like pearl on a necklace, like they each one, you could see that it was its own thing, but it was also building on the last thing. It felt very much like a sequence.
Like a rosary?
Yeah, exactly. Like a rosary, something that that I'm obsessed with. And and a lot of one of my main experiences throughout them was that I would receive sentences, just like a sentence. That's it. That's the sentence. And at that last one was like, the sentence was like, no more sentences.
Whoa.
Go do something else, go do something else. But the specific sentence was, you have reached the end of this sequence of lessons.
Wow. Does it feel like that's just this sequence for this period of time? Do you think that you will eventually have another sequence or another time that you will meet the medicine again?
I really don't know. I did meet the medicine again within the year of that time. And because I kind of already had a plan going to do so, and it felt silly to cancel a whole plan. Kind of against my better judgment in a way, I went to drink again, and I got sicker than I've ever gotten sick in my life. I was in a 3 or 4 full day fever, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, covered in sweat, nauseous. I think it was like I think it was dysentery. Actually, it was in the middle of the jungle, and there's no way to get out, and there was no way to treat it. So I was like, I actually think I'm going to die.
Really?
Yeah. So on one level, you could be like, oh, God, that's a clear message that you shouldn't go against the things that the medicine tells you. On the other hand, that sickness began exactly at the moment when I was taken back in memory to relive, as often happens, as you know, when you drink the medicine, to relive the first week of my life. I had a really serious medical condition where the valve between my stomach and intestine didn't open. So I couldn't digest food, and it was just like projectile vomiting everywhere. It was like starving to death.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to have surgery for that as a 1 week old. And who knew that there was any, as it were, memory of that left? The medicine took me right there and was like, this is what it was.
Wow.
So that was the moment that this really intense intestinal sickness started. So I feel like on the one hand, it was a sign like, don't go against what the medicine says. On the other hand, it was like, I really needed to have, that sickness was an incredible blessing.
Wow.
And that was the last time I drank. That was a number of years ago.
Okay. So did your parents tell you about, like, you knew about that from your parents, or did you just discover it through the experience of the medicine?
Oh, no, I have a big scar across my abdomen. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you knew. Yeah.
It's like a part of my myth of my childhood, from like knowing that happened.
But the medicine just took you to it.
To the experience of it,
wow,
which is really different than hearing about it or
absolutely
noticing a scar.
Wow.
It's one of those scars, those cool scars that you have from when you're so little that you can actually watch them grow with you as you grow. Like I think probably when they made the incision, it was like, I mean, I have no idea, I'm just guessing, but like a centimeter or something.
Oh.
And now I'm looking at it, it's like 3 or 4 inches. It's so cool.
That's interesting.
When I was being shown that sickness, I had this weird little voice in my head. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. And like, I'm like experiencing this like in the ceremony. I'm being like, oh my God, this is horrible. And this little voice in my head was like, you asked for it.
Really?
Yeah. Like this evil, like I thought it was like, oh my God, who is this like evil, like underground elf, mean little nasty voice who is telling me this? And then later I was like, oh no, that's true. In the sense that you come into a life for reasons that I wouldn't be able to know or much less speculate about.
Well, I think you can know, but that's a whole other thing.
Totally, you can know. I just happen not to. So I'm not going to claim that I do know. You know what I mean? Yeah. I totally believe that you can know.
Okay.
I first heard it and was like alarmed. And I thought maybe there was like this devilish side of my personality that was manifesting itself. And then later I was like, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just very honestly, like you asked for this. And I think that's true with all of the, what we might consider shitty experiences, is like, there's some part of us that's asking for it. And I don't know fully what I believe about it, but like in terms of like our karma and what our karmic path is in the current life that we're in, I think that there's some part of us that welcomes certain challenges in order to have the experience to know how to navigate that.
Totally. I mean, you're taking us right into the deep end, Paulette, because people don't like to hear this.
What?
They don't like to hear that bad things happen because,
really,
well, people worry that you're going to blame the victim, or there's a
care.
whole.
Sorry, but like,
I'm letting you say that. I'm not saying that. I'm letting you say that.
Yeah, I don't, because whoever's ready for that message, like they want to hear, they want to know this, and people that aren't ready for it, they're not going to listen to this. They're not going to be listening to this conversation.
I mean, I have a presentation of a very extreme version of this, which is that the Lama I was mentioning earlier, Garchen Rinpoche, who I study with, his instruction is extremely clear, and it is the following, verbatim: you will never experience anything in this or any lifetime that you yourself have not set the cause for.
Yeah.
And and that doesn't mean like when bad things happen, it's because you did something bad, or when good things, it means everything. The fact that I'm happen to not be wearing shoes and there's like a kind of rough feeling on the floor, like everything. That's just what I'm experiencing now. Or like I'm a little sweaty or whatever, you know what I mean? Everything you experience, you only experience because a cause has been set for it, and you have set that cause.
Yeah.
So that's karma. That's what karma actually is.
Yeah. It's like 100% responsibility for everything that we experience, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I find it very reassuring.
Yes.
And empowering.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I also study with a teacher named Lopan Barbu Dubois, who's a hard disciple of Garchen Rinpoche, and her instruction about this is, or the way she explains this is similar to what you just said, which is why I responded when you said it, which is that there's a kind of intimacy that you have when you recognize whatever comes as being you. Like whatever comes is you. Like, you know,
intimacy.
I said, yeah, it's intimacy. It's like, oh,
that.
here you are again. This, right? Like, oh, ow, I stubbed my toe, and it's like, here you are again. I set this cause. Or like, a chocolate sundae. Here you are again. So you said reassuring. I love that.
I think I intimately find myself through chocolate a lot. After you said the chocolate sundae thing, I was like, I relate to that. Yes, here I am again in a glorious way. So the maestro that you drink ayahuasca with in the jungle, he's known for like these really strong experiences, like really like powerful, knock you upside the head kind of experiences, you know? And I've been reflecting on that versus like there are other people, ayahuasqueros, maestros, the experience with the medicine with them is very gentle. It's like it takes you on this little journey. Whereas like with this shaman that you're talking about, the experiences are like boom, bam, like you're getting kicked and thrown around and thrashing and in the end, it's kind of like satisfying in a way. And that everyone kind of has their own preferences maybe of like how they like to go through these experiences, or some people maybe are so stubborn in actually seeing themselves that they might need a little bit of that. So that's kind of a thing that I'm exploring, and not just necessarily with ayahuasca, but also definitely with ayahuasca, but with other modalities, you know? So I'm curious with your experience as well with Tibetan Buddhism, do you find that it is gentle, or even through the teachings, is it sometimes this like smack you across the face feeling? Curious what your experience is like.
That's interesting. I'll say this. I never drank ayahuasca with anyone other than that person because I'm like constitutionally monogamous. Like as soon as I find something, I'm like, this is great. Why would I ever do anything else?
Wow.
And then at a certain point I thought, oh, this isn't so great. But that was the point where I wanted to stop anyway. So, or not wanted to, but that was what was happening. Was I was stopping. So I don't know. I've wondered about that, how different things are. In the context of Buddhism, the Lama who I study with is so profoundly gentle and beams out this like smiling Tara energy all the time. One hears that maybe there are other sides of the story, and that he's capable of being forceful. Nothing bad. I don't mean to. It's interesting. I'll say this. It's really interesting to study with a teacher, a guru, in fact, about whom there's not a whiff of scandal. I'm ready to go pretty far in the direction of people can be scandalous, like that. That works for me, like in a way that it doesn't work for everyone. Like I'm ready philosophically and maybe experientially, I don't know, but philosophically I'm ready to be like crazy wisdom, wild yogi behavior. It's all good. Like who am I to judge? Why do I think I know what is spiritual? Like, why do I think that I know that doing X behavior is not spiritual and some other behavior is spiritual? Like, that's what an absurd thought. Like, so I'm ready to go there. However, it's very strange to notice that, in fact, the guru who found me, who like like pulled me out of the ocean, is like, there's just none of that. That just doesn't. There's nothing of that. It's wild. Wow. It's wild.
At least not yet. No, I don't know. No, it's just this is a thing. It's like I've heard this story so many times. Like say, John of God. You know of him, right?
Very little, but I know that there's a scandal. I don't know what it is.
Okay.
You hear these things, you know?
Yeah, like, and I actually went there post scandal, which is an interesting thing in itself. But for decades he was doing so much work, so many psychic surgeries and channeling, so like hundreds of people per day. I think I want to say thousands maybe per day. Like he did so much. And then all of a
Wow.
sudden, boom, I don't know what it is or why it was always so hidden and secretive and underground. But then at some point, it's just like this huge wave where then like hundreds of or so many people shared
Wow.
all these different scandals. And it's like, what? And that's not an uncommon story. And I don't know if it's because people sort of deify people that are doing healing, that they're like afraid of maybe like speaking up. And then once there's like a certain threshold, then it's like the floodgates open or something. I don't know. And like, you saying like, there's not a whiff of scandal. It's like, what does that mean? What does that imply? Is he just so in his practice that there's no room for that? Or is there another side that we don't know of? And also you were talking about this crazy wisdom thing, which I love actually. Chogyam Trungpa, right? Is who talks about.
He certainly really popularized that phrase.
Yeah.
Brought that concept to the attention of Westerners.
Yes. But there's some like mythical character, Drukpakunley, the divine madman, and there's all these many, many stories of some of the crazy things that he would do. And they were completely scandalous, like to an extreme. And the point of it was to point out people's judgments, where people were holding, being contradictory in their thoughts. Like there was one story where he supposedly, this is like a mythical character. He kept like asking his mother to have sex with him. Yeah. Like some things like that are just to an extreme. And of course she was like, no, stop. And he just kept insisting. Then finally she was like, fine. Okay. And then he tells everybody, look what she's doing. She's willing to have sex with her son, blah, 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 just things like that, just to point out the mind and how convoluted it is and how we make all these judgments and assumptions of what's right and wrong, or when we feel like we're being noble or better or what's better, like in this woman's mind, or what he was pointing out, is basically that she's willing to compromise her values just because he was annoying or he was persistent. There's so many, like I read several of these ridiculous stories of what he would do. And when I went to Bhutan last year, I guess he's associated with like the phallus. So there's like phalluses everywhere, just like painted phalluses on buildings, on houses.
Cool.
It is associated with the divine madman and the crazy wisdom that he brought to the land and to people's minds. And I find that really fascinating because it's like, it takes someone, and if we were talking about karma, it's like, what sort of like karma are you signing up for, where you're willing to be in that position of like being ridiculed or whatever, for the sake of everybody else's enlightenment in a way. So
yeah. I'm gonna respond to the last thing you said, which is, I was looking, if you Google medieval genital Pilgrim Badge or something like that, you will find the most hilarious images, which are these. They think they have found them in various places across Northern Europe, and they don't really know what. Are they a joke? Are they not a joke? Like, if they are a joke, what is the joke? But they're like pilgrim badges. The same way, like if you go to Jerusalem, you bring back a palm branch, and if you go to like the
Camino de Santiago,
then you bring back a shell, the kind of shell that is there on the beach. And so there's like a kind of, and you pin it to your outfit or your bag or something like that. It's a kind of pilgrim badge, exactly. And there's these ones that are like dicks, like just, or like a vulva, just like a spread open vulva, and that's with like a crown.
Oh wow!
And, or like 4 dicks carrying a vulva on like on their shoulders, on one of those little, I can't remember the word for that, when you carry somebody on your shoulders like a king. So I think that's really important. Like I think it's shocking that we don't have a procession of a huge phallus through the streets the way that they did in Rome or even in medieval Christian Europe, or as you're saying, in contemporary Bhutan.
In Japan, there is a phallus festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures. It's so cool.
It still happens. Yeah.
I feel like it's important. I feel like there's this kind of spiritual love and lighty thing that wouldn't know what to do with that.
I see what you mean. Like,
and so that's why I'm like, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
In the context of
penises for peace.
I just feel like I'm not in a position to judge other people's behavior, but I can see that in principle. Like in principle, it seems to me to make sense that sometimes you would need to be very forceful. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's beyond what I can really know at the place where I am. It's beyond me to know what behaviors are motivated by care for others and what behaviors are not motivated by care for others. Like I can't know that. I was present for a teaching that this teacher, Barbara Dubois, who I mentioned earlier, gave in a prison for sex offenders, in fact, to a little tiny Buddhist Sangha inside the prison. And it was, an hour-long teaching, and there were all kinds of things, and people took refuge. It was incredibly beautiful. And something that she said to these men, incarcerated men, at the end was, in the context of the total constant violence and wildness and unpredictability and scariness of their situation. The teachings that she gave them that I just imprinted itself in my mind was this. She said, you can go down fighting, but don't go down hating. They're in this violent situation, Yes. So it's not like you should just necessarily be all milquetoast about it. Yeah. Or like whatever. Yeah. I'm doing the I'm meditating gesture. You can't see me, but I'm like, oh, oh, nothing's going to hurt me. That's not real. That's not, you can't ask somebody that they be kind of like a rug for others to step on. That doesn't seem right. I do have
a story about that, but that'll come later. Yeah.
These aren't absolutes. These are trying to feel through what is clearly like a really troublesome thing. But anyway, this teaching that I really took this to heart. You can go down fighting, but don't go down hating. That's a little different than a teacher being fierce, but it somehow it has to do with motivation and whether the person that you're being fierce with, whether you're treating them as you or as other, whether they are a mirror in which you are loving reality, or whether it's like an other that you have to like control and destroy and fuck you.
Basically whether you're seeing it, separation or connectedness. Exactly. In a way. I'm going to sit with that because I don't know where to place that in my mental map of all the different teachings that I've gotten. But I did want to share kind of along those lines this one of the teachers of A Course in Miracles that I've been following. His name's David Hofmeister, and he has this story where he was guided to work with this woman and talk with her and have really profound conversations and realizations. But she also had a very jealous ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, whatever, some ex-person. He saw him one time with her and he jumped out of the car, grabbed him, threw him on the ground. I don't remember exactly what physical actions happened, but the way that David was explaining it was he was just in the state of defenselessness. And there is a line in the Course, which is, in my defenselessness, my safety lies, where, and he lives like the principles of the Course. It's not just like concept. And so this is one of the stories where he was actually living it, where he didn't fight back. He just basically let the guy throw him to the ground and smiling at the guy with loving eyes. After that, the guy kind of snapped out of it and realized what he's doing and that he's acting out of love. And that because David basically is kind of like this very clear mirror of just being so at peace, then it's like there wasn't room for the guy to keep blaming David. So he just had this realization of, like realizing that it was himself and that wasn't in alignment with what he really wanted, and ended up taking David and getting him like fixed and taken care of, ended up having like a really deep healing experience through that. So, I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm more in the way of being of the, in my defenselessness, my safety lies, at least conceptually, I don't think I've had anyone try to really like just beat me up or something like that to be able to defend myself in the way that he did. But at least conceptually, I think that that's a really powerful way of being and allowing healing to come through. I don't think everyone has to do that too, and especially in the situation that you're explaining, like in prison. Like I don't know if that would make sense. What would happen?
Yeah, exactly. It's not about like laying down a rule of behavior.
Right.
It's about or if there is a rule, it's like a rule of thumb, and it's about motivation, I think. I mean, it seems to me like I love this. Tell me again the line from the Course. My defense.
In my defenselessness, my safety lies.
In my defenselessness, my safety lies. Yeah. Yeah. A phrase that I use in my mind is my only armor is unguardedness.
Oh.
Which is the same thing.
Same thing in different words.
Same thing in different words, yeah. There's like body, speech, and mind, let's say. And mind is the most important. So it's crucial that the mind, I mean, I'm saying this like I know, I have no, like I feel like I can feel my guardedness all the time. Like I'm always encountering my guardedness. So it's not like I hope it doesn't sound like I'm totally unguarded. To the contrary. I feel like that's one of the main things that I'm thinking about all the time is like, oh shit, there's another place where I'm guarded. But in any case, if there's a body, speech, and mind, it would be most important that the mind, I think, I'm guessing, would be most important that the mind be unguarded.
Yeah.
Pretty important that the speech be unguarded, and somewhat less important that the body be unguarded. I'm guessing. You know what I mean?
I fully believe that everything that happens in the physical manifestation starts somewhere in the mind, whether it's conscious or not. But yeah, everything is rooted there. So yeah, I wanted to kind of come back because we've gone on a couple of tangents, but which I love. I love tangents because it always leads to somewhere new. It's like when we went on this walk today from the neighborhood we're in to another neighborhood, and I've been to that neighborhood so many times, but every time that you take a quote unquote wrong turn, it's like it's like you discover a new pathway to the same place and somehow solidifies your understanding of the map of how to get from point A to point B. And I mean that more metaphorically as well.
Yeah.
You said before how your teacher like pulled you from the ocean. And I'm curious too, how did you end up finding him? Because I've always been open to finding someone I would consider a teacher, someone to like just, go all in and fully follow. But I don't think I ever have. And I don't think I will, just because my approach is kind of like the opposite of what you were saying. Like if you tend to approach things with monogamy, I'm like in an open relationship with the universe or something. So, I like to take bits and pieces and then make connections. And sometimes I'll go deep, but like to say that I would like follow somebody for my whole life or even like years, like it would take a lot for me to be that sort of dedicated. So I'm just curious how he came into your life and then how it felt.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll preface it by saying that I have discovered a law, which I hope gets named after me.
Okay.
which is nobody wants to hear about your guru. It's one of those shocking things. Like, I don't know if you've had this experience. I had this with ayahuasca, for example. My husband is from Peru, and I have friends who are drinking ayahuasca. And so I was hearing something about it for some years. And after a few years, it was like, oh, that would be a great idea. That seems like the right time. And it was like, holy mackerel. holy mackerel, like what? It's it's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, like I returned to the world of like phone reception and people I know. And I told everybody I knew, like, oh my God, I found the thing, and they're all like, cool. So do you have any plans for the weekend? Just like totally not like, it's just as though depending on the person I was talking to, as though I had either said something mildly interesting, but not that interesting, or something that was like a little bit like maybe I shouldn't have talked about it, like talking about like a bowel movement or like a little bit like, can you just keep that to yourself? Like, oh, great. Like, great. You're doing drugs. Like, great. or like they wouldn't even hear, like there was no receptor
I
site
see. Yeah.
at all. And then, and then every once in a while you talk to somebody who's like, oh, I'm really excited about that. But anyway, it's a similar experience I had, only much stronger actually, with meeting my teacher, which is like, dude, everybody, like, I just met a bodhisattva. So everybody, you're all going to quit your jobs and come follow him, right? Like, and like nobody does, just nobody does. So that's strange. And then I'll say another thing, like strange experientially.
Because in your mind, in your experience, you're like, I've discovered this amazing treasure and everyone should want to get on this too. Is that the feeling?
Exactly. It's like when you fall in love. It's actually the same thing as when you fall in love and you're like, you call your old friends up, the friends you've had forever, or the new friends, or like whoever you randomly are sitting next to on the bus. And you're like, here's a picture of the person I love. And they're like, well, okay, he looks okay. I mean, he just looks like,
a dude.
He's just a dude. It's just another dude. Friends are always like, I met the most amazing person. And then you're like, I was not that amazing.
See, for years, I think I was that person. Like, oh my gosh, this person's the best. Like not the one necessarily, but like the feeling of the excitement of feeling.
But
like
the thing is, you're right. I mean, the person is correct. Like,
yes,
they discovered another Buddha. Like, right? Like, when you're in love, you can see how perfect and fresh and miraculous another person is. And it's very hard to see that if you're not in love. So I think the person is correct, or you or me is correct when we're like, I just met the most amazing person, obviously. But then it's hard to stay there.
Yeah.
And it's hard for other people to see it. And then I'll say one other thing before I tell you this story, that because you've asked me to tell it, which is that I think it is really wise that you don't want to follow. Not that I could tell you what's wise or not, but it sounds pretty sound to not be ready to sign up to follow anybody. Like His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, and everybody else in the tradition says, like, you should test out a guru for like, I can't remember what it is, 8 years, 9 years before you commit.
That's a commitment to me. That quote unquote testing out. That's
you have to. You have to test out a guru for many years, the better part of a decade before they say before. I mean, I didn't do that, of course. I was like, I'm in. Hello, I'm in. nice to meet you. I'm in.
Yeah, I can see that. Wow.
Well, what happened is this. I was having a spiritual crisis next to a missile range in California, where I had rented the tiniest cabin in the most desolate part of the desert near here to try to work on a project. And I was basically at the end of my rope. And
you were writing, right?
Yeah, which for me is sometimes like a form of torture. And
we can explore that later too.
Maybe, oh God. And I was just like haunted by these just obsessive thoughts of hatred towards someone that I love very, very much. And I was in a weird spiral of obsession and misery. And I went to this little bookstore, and as happens, as you know, this book fell off the shelf, which was this book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who you mentioned before. And I was like, okay, I mean, if a book falls off the shelf when you walk by
Yeah.
and it's a spiritual book and you're
Yeah.
having a spiritual crisis, you got to buy the book. So I
Wow.
bought this book in this little store and read it during this writing retreat, not a spiritual retreat, supposedly. Everything's a spiritual retreat,
Yeah.
including this horror fest that we're in right now is a beautiful spiritual retreat.
Yeah, totally.
And I read this book and I was like, I don't have a clue what this book is about. This book is backwards. This book makes no sense to me.
Really?
It's so interesting. I'm obsessed with it and I have no idea what he's talking about. And he must be wrong about it all. It just must be wrong. It's all backwards. That was my experience of reading this book. And then a few months later, I was on a so-called retreat where I met you, that retreat where we met. And Trungpa Rinpoche showed up in my ayahuasca vision.
Like you saw him?
Yeah. And he gave me a teaching in the vision, a kind of gestural, like he kind of pointed towards something and showed me something and was like, you can read my books now. So I was like, okay. Like, I don't even know who this guy is. Like, I didn't even look up who he was. I didn't know. I mean, I vaguely knew he was Tibetan. I didn't know what lineage he was from. I didn't know any. I had never read a Tibetan. I'd read one Buddhist book before. And found it beautiful, but didn't do much with it. You know what I mean? I was like, this is great. And then did something else.
Yeah.
I just knew nothing about him, but there he was. And so I came back to the US and basically his Shambhala publishing company has published his works in 10 volumes, each of which is like 600 pages. And I just bought all of them.
Wow.
And read them from beginning to end over the course of a year. And that was and I just, it didn't seem as nuts to me. Like, it made more sense to me. I started feeling my way into it. And I told a wise person who I have relied on for guidance about this experience and said, oh, this Buddhist thing, I don't really know. Like, there's a Zen center near my house. Should I go there and learn to meditate? And she was like, oh, you don't take this kind of thing in a casual way. Like, this person belongs to a specific lineage. You should study with that lineage. And so I kind of fell in with some Buddhists near me who were in that lineage. And through that, it took maybe 6 months, and I heard of this retreat that was happening in Arizona that His Eminence Garchen Rinpoche was giving. I didn't know who he was. I saw his picture and kind of something weird happened in me. And it's like, I guess I'll go out there. And it was like, I mean, I've heard so many people say the thing I'm about to say, but I went up to him and looked in his eyes, and there was nobody there. There was just nobody there. I've never experienced anything like it with anybody else in my whole life. Just sky. Just like, you look in somebody's eyes and you see something. You see, like, they want you to know that you like them, they want you to know that they like you, or they want to scare you, or they want to make you feel more important, or them more important, or they want to make you laugh, or they want something. They're trying to have something happen. Or they're trying to have nothing happen, but there's somebody in there who's like doing something, or they're zonked out, and there's just like absence.
Like a void.
Like a misery, like they're just not there. But it was so, like I say, I had never seen anything like it. It was, there wasn't somebody there. There was there was spontaneous kindness, and just like just radiating kindness, but there wasn't a person there, and that was like that's when I was like, sign me up. I'm not waiting the 9 years. I'm in.
I see. It literally was nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
Sign me up. Okay.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was just because that evoked an experience in you that you just knew that you needed to learn from him based on that.
It's like recognition. It's like, oh, it's not a decision. It's not like, I should, I say sign me up, but that's a very silly way of saying it. It's more like, oh, okay. Thank you. Like, I'm so happy to be back, like.
Here we are again or something.
Here we are again, yeah. And it's not like, I think people have the idea that, I'm sure there are gurus like this, and it sounds sketchy to me too, but it has nothing to do with like, I'm giving up my will and I'm going to do what somebody else wants me to do. It's like, Barbara Dubois has expressed the feeling of meeting Garchen Rinpoche in the following words. You can see that I like to quote people because you receive these luminous sentences from people, and it's like, well, that's it. I'm gonna hear this. I'm gonna memorize this sentence. I'm gonna plant it in my heart and let it grow there. So some of these sentences, and what she expressed about this is, it's not a feeling of I'm gonna do what he says, or I'm gonna whatever, sign away my this or my that. No, it's a spontaneous feeling wells up in the person, and it's this. This is in her words: if he can, I can. If I can, I must. If I must, I shall. When you meet somebody who, and this is the feeling I had meeting her too, if she can, I can. If I can, I must. If I must, I shall. It's like, here's an actual person who's, like, it's not like 2,500 years ago, the Buddha lived and he sat under a tree, or Jesus was so obedient that he died on the cross. That is beautiful and wonderful and inspiring, but there's something that happens. It's like, again, holy mackerel, like here's somebody who has done it. That was what it was like for me.
And so you feel pretty good about this path. And I don't know, does it just feel like this is solid, like this is your path, or do other things come and interweave into your experience of your own spiritual practice, or like, does it feel this is the path?
It feels like this. One of the moments that really, that I had a question that was my question to myself, of course, which was like, well, does this mean I'm a Buddhist? I wasn't raised a Buddhist. I was never interested in Buddhism. I never studied it. I don't care about it. I'm not an East Asian studies scholar. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. It's not like I wanted to, I don't care about that. But, and when I say I don't care about it, I don't care about it any more than any of the other things. Everything's a thing. But one of the moments that really shifted that in me is when I heard Rinpoche teach, say to a small group of us, that in response to somebody's question, that he himself felt and feels great devotion to Mother Mary. I thought, yeah, okay, that's where we are. Okay, it's not about being a Buddhist. Give me a break. Who cares? Like, why would... That's not what it's about.
In the same way that, like, Buddha wasn't a Buddhist and Jesus wasn't a Christian kind of thing.
Yeah. The thing that came into my mind to say when you asked me that is, it's like it's like if somebody asked me like, so are you going to stick with your mother for the rest of your life? It's like, yeah. Yeah, it's not so much like, is this the path? Am I going to be a Buddhist? Am I going to like sign on the dotted line? And when people ask me, I'm going to be like, I'm a Buddhist. No, it's like, here's like, this is my mother. Wow. How wonderful. Like, like, aren't you thrilled? I'm thrilled.
Wow.
About my actual mother, you know? And then in this case, here's this beautiful person who has kindly welcomed me, you know?
Wow. Thank you so much for joining in part 1 of this conversation with Jordan. In the next part, we talk about time capsules, meditation competitions, and how consciousness remains even with dying cultures. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Your Inner State on the Interstate. For more information, visit yourinnerstate.love.